This episode is brought to you by Simple Funding LLC. For all of your pre-settlement funding needs, contact Simple Funding LLC to receive your money promptly. They're a customer-centric legal funding company that provides exceptional funding solutions at affordable rates. Simple Funding covers a diverse range of cases, including car accidents, slip and falls, worker compensation, medical malpractice, wrongful death, and more. They recognize that life goes on and you need to access your funds immediately, which is why they offer clients a swift and efficient process with minimal documentation requirements. For more information, visit simplefundingllc.com or contact them directly at 678-855-6232. Enjoy the show. And welcome back to another episode of True Stories from a Real Private Eye. I'm your host, Vinnie Coppola. With me, as always, is Lynn Lambdin, a real private investigator from Atlanta, Georgia. And as promised, we have a very special guest, a national hero, a Marine. Ken Kraus is here with us. Thank you so much for being here, Ken.
My pleasure, Jen. Thank you.
Ken, we're glad to have you tonight. And as we promised last week, we told everybody you'd be here. Ken has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I met him through this Black Widow case about 25, 30 years ago. It was a long time. And we're going to talk a little bit about this case, and then we'll talk about Ken's book, which is more fascinating than this case by far.
Yeah.
To me, anyway, probably not to Ken. Ken had to live this nightmare, but
hey, Lynn, since we have Ken here, we should address that email that we got.
Yeah. Well, one of the emails that we got, Ken, is people. I didn't do a very good job of describing what she looked like, what the Black Widow looked like. So
people are going, "Hey, man, what does she look like, man?" We got a couple of emails asking about what she looked like,
because they're wondering how this woman can destroy men's life. So, and I didn't do a very good job. I said that she was, a little above average, but I'll let you describe her, Ken. Maybe you got a better memory of that than I do.
Well, back then she was about 30 years old. At the time, she was a hot little body. She would remind you of a cheerleader. Okay.
All right.
Maybe late college, 25 to 30, right in there. And very articulate when she talked to you soft. And I remember her hygiene was impeccable, very, very clean. Her nails, everything, when she came into the police department when we were talking. So, it's just observation skills you look at when you see people. And she had green eyes, and at the time she had reddish brown hair. But it's a very nice looking woman, and she was, there was nothing that stood out with no tattoos, no scars or anything like that. So it was. She's a looker. She could turn your head once or twice.
Yeah.
Well, when I looked at her, when I served her in the jail cell, she kind of had an angry look at me, Ken. She was kind of pissed when I went back to serve her there, but with that.
Well, she was in jail. You don't see many happy people in jail, right?
Yeah.
No, and but she falsified that police report, and when Ken verified that everything was a lie, he did what he had to do and arrested her. And Ken, did she come in, or did you have to go pick her up?
No, we arrested her when she came in for a second interview. I wanted a follow-up interview, and we weren't going to go out to her house because actually she had 2 or 3 addresses. And if we went to 1 or 2 addresses with the normal protocol of uniformed officers, she'd have known we were there to pick her up. So once we had looked at her criminal history and found out what her patterns were of behavior, we figured when I talked it over with my boss, the sergeant at CID, he thought it was best. He said, "Hey, you only interviewed her 1 time. Get her back in here for, answer some more questions on the guise of that and pretext per se." So what happened is that we invited her in and sat down with a cup of coffee and everything. And I said, "Oh, you finished your cup of coffee? Good. Here's your arrest warrant."
Well,
you mentioned something about getting the U.S. Marshals involved. Tell us more about that. Right, Len? Right,
Yeah,
Lynn?
well,
Yeah.
she had a probation officer, and she had a business card stuck on the door where that I guess she had missed a probation officer or something, and I turned that over to Ken, and Ken followed up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ken, tell us a little bit about that.
the the normal procedures, you're going to run everybody that's involved in this case, including your client at the time, and to see what their background is. You want to see exactly who you're dealing with, and look for any weaknesses or verifications of what they're saying and what the stories are, because everything's coming in out of the blue. So as soon as you run this, what we nicknamed her the Black Widow, as soon as we run her, we looked at her and we said, "Oh my God, she's wanted by the United States Marshal Service, and they will extradite, which usually they will because they're federal." So when
Yeah.
I brought this to my boss, he says, "Yeah, let's bump this case to right to the front before we lose track of her, because it's not a violent crime per se that she was looking at, but and I wasn't doing violent crimes at the time. I have a financial identity fraud and some other ones, which he says, since you started this case, you run with it." So when I contacted the U.S. Marshals, they weren't familiar in that office at the time in Alabama. They had to get back to me. So I said, "Look, you work the case, whoever it's going to be, the officer, the agent that was the marshal that was in charge of that case. I think, if I remember correctly, he was transferred to another region, maybe Colorado or something. And what that did was put us like 2 hours behind. So it was catching up, trying to verify exactly why what she had done, and why the marshals had she had pled out to a federal case and was supposedly helping the marshals. But as soon as I learned that, I realized we got. Once you want to verify too, when you deal with the marshals, make sure these people are not in the witness protection program, or you don't blow any cover or information on them where they can't be put in that program. So it's you're dealing with a lot of unknowns at that time.
So just to be clear, she evaded the U.S. Marshals. They lost track of her.
That's correct.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah,
she had so
she
many
was.
aliases,
Yeah. She was using aliases. Holy cow. Okay. Well, that'll help.
and because she's living with different guys, or guys were buying her apartments, then she could live under an assumed name. You could never find her. She wouldn't.
Right.
She didn't have a job with a social security number that we could track her through any state that she was in, through the labor office. She didn't file taxes to the IRS. So I mean, you can't find them there. She's a
She just
ghost.
disappeared. Wow.
Yep, off the
Wow.
grid.
And she had slept with some federal agent in Alabama, or something happened, and she lied on him and tried to get him in trouble, and that's why the marshals were after her, because she had skipped her probation in Alabama on something. I never could get a story behind it, but after all of this happened, she came after Ken and I, and the attorney, the divorce attorney. And we didn't do anything other than just follow the law.
Ratting her out to the marshals. Right. That's what she was upset about. Right.
Well, she's the one who initiated the case. She's the one who filed the false report on our client.
Yeah.
All we did was follow the path that she had set forth.
Right. So she was upset about that, and that's why she came after you guys.
It was supposedly a burglary case, basically.
Right.
That, Lynn? And harassment and burglary. And I said, okay, we'll roll it all into one. And we had to start looking at cases where, do you know the person, et cetera? Has there been threats, et cetera? Because this thinking, if there's any kind of TPOs or protection orders or anything, it can easily go from harassment, which is a misdemeanor, to stalking or aggravated stalking against a court order, which is now a felony. And you deal with that differently.
Wow.
Ken, didn't she sit in jail for a few weeks over there before they actually come and got her?
Yes, she was there a good 10 days or 2 weeks, because she wouldn't talk to me at first, and she just pouted out. And then when after we got her booked in, I said she wanted to talk to me, so I went back over. I listened to her story, which was a bunch of more bullshit with the marshals. And so finally, I got hold of the marshal that worked the case somewhere in that time frame, and he contacted me, and we sat down. And yeah, she tried to. They wanted to work her as a confidential informant, but she wasn't going to play along with the game, and she actually got in trouble by being a mule for the informants they wanted to work with that had to do with drugs. So DEA was also on the screen. They were going to bring her over to the DEA if she could get through the basic what we say vetting of possibility of what their thresholds were. But when she started fooling around and she found out that she didn't know these drug dealers like she thought she did. Okay, she was bullshitting the agents, and they said, "Well, you're really nothing we can hold. We can't really use you, so we're not going to, help you with the other federal case she was working on with the marshals." So that's when she got pissy, and she decided to try to blackmail one of the agents who was married at the time, a special agent in charge. And as from what I was told, it was another bunch of lies. She's really good at it, and that's what they said. They took a warrant for her, and that she jumped out of Louisiana, and then they tracked her to Alabama, and then they lost track of her, and she wasn't that big of a deal. If they knew sooner or later they were going to run into her because she just can't keep from stepping in shit. That's all,
guys.
And here she was. She did it again.
This is a movie right here.
Yeah,
this is a feature film. This is unbelievable. Now the DEA is involved. We didn't know. I didn't know. We didn't discuss that last week.
And then she comes up here and gets involved with a married man who's just really
they're all
turns
married.
out to be a drunk.
They're all married. They're all professional, and they all had money, or she wouldn't talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
She was in it for the finance, not the romance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And she destroyed this man. I mean, she completely destroyed him. I mean, the judge actually locked the bank accounts down so that he couldn't take the 401ks and everything. He was taking every diamond he could get to give to this girl within like 2 months.
Yeah.
So the judge locked everything down so he couldn't take it. So, but the wife ended up, or the ex-wife ended up with everything, and he got nothing. He ended up with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
A broke heart and a broke wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I've known Ken for about 18, 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I found out, and I don't even remember how I found out. I think that I seen an ad or not an ad, but a advertisement where that they would be honoring Ken at the city council for being an American hero. And I called Ken up and I said, "Ken, what is this?" And he said, he told me what was going on. And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Look this up." And I looked it up and I read it and I said, "Ken," I said, "I got one question for you." I said, "You were cap shot over in Iran in the Marine Corps and taken hostage and sentenced to death. And then you come out and go to work for a damn police department." I said, "There got to be something wrong with you."
Yeah.
I said, Ken's a national hero, and he comes out and he never mentions it. I know this man for 20 years, and never once has anybody ever said to me who this man was. When I was about 10, 11 years old, 12 years old, we used to watch the updates on the Iran hostage crisis on TV.
Right.
And lo and behold, I've known him for 20 years and didn't even know it was him.
Yeah. Yeah. For our listeners who may not have listened, who have heard our previous episode, Ken Kraus was one of the original hostages in Iran during the Jimmy Carter administration. And I was young. I think I was in 6th or 7th grade at the time. There was no internet. There was no iPhones. There was nothing like that. But I still remember seeing all the stories about the men and women that were taken hostage in Iran. And Ken, correct me if I'm wrong about this. I remember a botched rescue attempt. I vaguely remember that. Am I thinking of something else? Or
No, sir. That was called Desert One was the operation.
Yeah.
And it was a failed rescue mission in April of 1980.
Yes, I see. I kind of remember. I mean, magazines and all that stuff. Yeah. Did you know anything about that was happening, or that they were trying?
No, it was kept quite secret until the failure, and then it hit the news, and of course the Iranians blew that thing up for all the mileage they could get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ken wrote a book, and it's called A Marine Enduring Hell. And you can get it on Amazon and anywhere that books are sold. And It's a wonderful book if you read it. Ken was the very first man shot in this. When all this went to hell, and it's a great book. And I don't want to tell any secrets, but one of the things that amazed me the most is, I'll tell you this: is Ken was armed with a shotgun. And when I first started reading this book, I asked Ken, I said, Ken, why in the hell did they arm you with a shotgun? And here's what he told me. He said, keep reading, you'll find out. and that's what I'm going to tell everybody is just keep reading just buy the book and keep reading. It's a great read. And there's a lot of things in there that that you don't know that you should know. But Ken, I have a lot of questions after reading your book. And one of the questions that comes to mind is, if you were 18 years old again, would you join the Marines again?
Knowing what I know now, that's tough to say, because it was what I wanted to do at the time. It was shortly after 1973, the Yom Kippur War with Israel and the other 7 Arab nations wasn't going too well for in the Middle East. And how that tied into is because we supported Israel in that for the most part, and the OPEC oil producing countries closed the oil valve on us, and it really crippled the United States.
Yes,
so
it did.
I graduated Valley Forge Military Academy. We couldn't find a job anywhere, and I actually had as I write in my book, I had a nomination to go to the Naval Academy at Annapolis, but I failed the entrance, the physical. I have a heart murmur, so they didn't disqualify me totally. But what it did is I had to get a waiver now from the medical board. Well, Vietnam is winding down. They're pulling all the troops home. They're cutting the troops back, and the military. So the military at that time was probably the best option, because I was waiting around, and they really don't put you to a lot of effort to get you that pass when they got so many other people who can just take your spot and get into the academy. So I knew that if I wasn't going to get in that first year, I was going to have to find a job, and there wasn't much around. And the Marine Corps at the time looked good. Like I said, Vietnam was winding down, so I did really well in the ASVAB scores, and I could have been any MOS, anything I wanted to. It's just, it wasn't that I was so intelligent. It's just that in military academy where I was at Valley Forge, they taught you how to read the question and how to get the best answer possible. So, going into the Marine Corps was a good option for me there. I was the first Marine in my family. Every other male that my dad, his brothers, my uncles, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, they all served in every branch. But it was just happenstance that, I went down to the AFE station, the Armed Forces Center, that day. And I walked in, and I just went. That's where all the offices of all the branches of the service were there. And it just literally happened to be out to lunch. And at least one day a week, one of the officers stays open. And this happened to be while the other ones went to lunch. Anyway, so the Marine office was open, and he offered me coffee, sat down, and, he did the real soft spot. Wasn't going to wait for the other guys to come back. He's got me sitting there ready to go.
Yeah.
So he gave me his best recruiting speech, and the dress blues and everything else. The next thing you know, I'm signed on, and I'm taking an oath, and my ass is on the way to San Diego boot camp.
Yeah, but there's one thing about it. When you read the book, you and knowing you and knowing you as a police officer, there was never a moment that I ever known you, and reading your book, there was never a moment that you were afraid to step up and do the right thing, even if it put your life in danger. You always stepped up. You may have had the fear in the back of your head, but it didn't show. You always stepped up and done the right thing.
Well, yeah, you're right about that. It's just, I think it's the way I was raised. I went to Catholic school, and it was formalized. The nuns, they were there, very strict about things, and they held you accountable, for what your feelings are. And even though you don't think you're afraid, it doesn't show, Lynn, that the fear is. I was taught that really fear was not a real thing. It's a perceived thing. Fear is how you react to stimulus. A knife coming at you, that's danger. That's how you react to it, is the fear. Danger and hazards are what's going to hurt you, what's going to kill you. Fear is not. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
you have the emotion, you have the things that we've learned about, your breathing exercises, how you can go into tunnel vision, audio dispensation, and a lot of things can happen to the body under stress. Okay. But you can learn to control those. Okay. And use them as energy, because the energy is going to be there. You can't deny that. It's, the old adage of what courage is, it's the fear, but it's turned into what you think you need to do. And if you've never been trained and you don't know what to do and you panic, you'll run. That doesn't mean you're a coward. If you step up to the bat, to be a first responder, a police officer, or a military person, you're not a coward to begin with. It's just that, if you train yourself to react to certain stimuli. So, to say that it's not fear, it is fear, and you will feel it. You will have adrenaline dumps. There'll be physiological things that happen to your body you won't understand, because they are very real. But the point being is that, yeah, you're scared shitless, but you say, what other options do you got? What's my
Yeah.
mission? Is it just me to save my ass? I could run. Do I need to fight this fight, or should I come back when I got better odds and better chances, or somebody now is going to get killed or hurt if I don't act? Then you got no choice. There you go. So
Yeah,
sometimes
that's the key, to process that.
yeah,
Process all those, like,
in seconds.
in seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. I'm glad to hear that running doesn't necessarily make me a coward.
No.
Well, Vinny, with you, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Well, can but you stepped up and you took enemy fire, and you were beaten and you were tortured, and you wasn't willing to give up anything. You were still, I mean, it's hard to describe. I mean, but you were still willing to stand up and say, I'm an American and I'm not giving you anything. I'm willing to die for my country.
They
Well,
tried to
then-
get information from you, Ken?
Yeah. See, what happens is that the embassy was assaulted, and it was a gun battle for a couple hours. And in the gun battle, we had run low on ammunition, and it was just myself and two other Marines. We were defending a critical area with about 22 other, I say Americans, but they weren't all Americans. They were non-combatants, foreign service, local employees, embassy staff, whatever. Anyway, since we had already engaged these terrorists in a firefight. Several of them were dead, and more were dying every minute. We were down to next to nothing in ammo, and no other option. There was nowhere to retreat. We were in a basic Alamo stance, and it just happenstance that a miracle. When you read this book, you'll see that if anybody buys this book, you stay in contact with me. There's no less than 6 miracles. I mean, God-given miracles, not just happenstance coincidences. There's at least 6. And if all 6 of these don't come into play during that week, then I'm dead. Now, you might be able to find 7, 8, or 9. Other people have brought that to my attention. I said that's possible, but that it's your opinion at that time. So, barring those 6 miracles at that time, it just happened to be a chance during a prayer that I had, that I guess the good Lord just let it happen, is that I got to jump on the leader that was there, and at gunpoint negotiated the release of the Americans and the non-combatants and everybody in exchange for myself and the 2 Marines, which, he said, look, at that point I had the shotgun pointed at his head, and I said, look, this is the best year you're going to get all day. I said, no more your people die, no more my people die. And I was still looking, I can see his face when he looked at me and in his voice, and he says, and what if I don't make the deal? Well, I said, well, I'm going to blow your fucking head off. And in the book, I said it. I'm going to decorate that wall behind you with your brains.
Yeah.
I said, you better make it quick, Mustasha, because this shotgun's getting mighty heavy. And these are the things you go through, But anyway, you fast forward, and then once we had surrendered, and we had destroyed our weapons and made them so they wouldn't fire, hid everything, destroyed the radios. Basically, it's a protocol, that you don't give your enemy anything, as as just the opposite of what one recent president just gave away in Afghanistan. That's
Yeah.
insanity. I
Yeah.
couldn't sleep that night when I heard that. But anyway, so when they come to the door and he found out that all the stuff that we gave him was turned over to him was in a pile and it was just like junk. It was useless. And it made him look like a smacked monkey's ass in front of his people. And so he started roughing us up and beating us up. And then he took the other two Marines outside, and they put the boots to me bad. They broke my ribs. They cracked my jaw, and they beat me almost unconscious, as you'll read in the book. And I did lose consciousness for a while, so I don't know what happened, till I came to again. But that's when they had found one of the shotguns, and I guess they found a round or two, and he had the shotgun pointed right at me, and he was just so pissed off that this is cussing Americans and the way we can't keep our honor and our treaties and all kinds of bullshit, and he just pointed the gun right at me. He looked right down that bead of that thing, and I saw that bead. It was like 25 feet away, and I heard the voice say, "He's going to shoot you, Ken. You're going to get boom." That's all you hear, and you roll over. And next thing you know is I'm waking up in a hospital, and I'm out of uniform. I'm in a gown, and I'm all bandaged up, and I got intravenous in me. You can see the picture in the newspaper that they took a picture of me and parked it out there in the city newspaper, and just cradled it. Marine. What were they calling us at the time? Commandos, kill innocent Iranians. So I said, those sons of bitches were the ones that came over the wall and started firing us first. They had long guns. They had the 308 caliber weapons. They could engage us at 300 yards. Like Lynn said, the State Department in the book, when you get to read it, they knew that assault was coming, or they had the intelligence. Something was up. Maybe they didn't tell the actual diplomats, and it didn't get back to the ambassador at the time, William Sullivan. But they knew, and they knew, because even the Farsi police that stand outside the gates, and like our GSA cops in Washington outside the areas, they knew something's up because they didn't come to work that day. That's in the book too.
Oh.
So there was a lot of things that was tongue in cheek that they don't talk about in there. But after that beating, and then I try to sit up, and I look down, and I got about a 2-foot scar that runs in my stomach. Makes it looks like an NFL football. It really does. Whatever they stitched me up with, jeez, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But I was only in the hospital for a couple hours from what I remember, and in come some goons, and then that's where I was kidnapped out. They ripped the intravenous out. They put a blindfold over me. They hooded me. And they drugged me out pretty much almost naked. You know how those little gowns are with your ass hanging out the back. And I don't know where all my uniforms and ID tags were and everything gone, but, just about naked. And it was February. It's ice cold. I mean, it was like below zero out there. And, so you drug off to a place called Evin Prison. You want to Google that one. It's Evin, Evin Prison. And it was one of the Shah's horrible Savak torture chambers. And some of the stuff that I talk about in that book, most people won't even believe. You'll have to go in and find other resources that verify exactly what I'm saying. Because it's horrifying. I'm telling you, it's literally what the name of that book is. A Marine endures hell. But from what is there is constant beatings, tortures, watching other prisoners get tortured, and these are their own Iranians that they're doing this to. I mean, they would sit there and they would torture these guys in his chair. They would pull teeth, and when they couldn't pull teeth out, they snapped them off at the. It's horrible. It goes on, and you're in a cell and you don't know whether you're wounded. You're not getting medical attention. Your body's going septic on you. You don't see the light of day. You don't get 3 meals a day, so you can't tell how many days that you're there. And the whole thing is deprivation. And then they come in and they beat you some more, torture some more. And at first, they didn't know who I was, because whoever kidnapped me out, the Fedayeen guerrillas is what they were, turned me over to the people that were running the prison. And they just said, they basically told me he's from the embassy, and I had no ID or anything. So I didn't know if I was the ambassador, if I was the head of chief of station for the CIA, or if I was the fucking janitor. They had no freaking clue, But part of survival, escape, and resist and evade, you're taught that you don't want to lie and bullshit to people that to the point where they get pissed off at you, because then it's going to do you more harm.
Right.
But you've got to give them something that they believe in to keep you alive. Because if you just tell them you're a goddamn janitor, they don't, you're no good. They're going to kill you anyway. So damned if you do, damned if you don't, catch 22. You know what I mean? So
So how long did that go on? How long?
8 days.
8 days.
8 days.
Can,
Yeah.
now, can you confirm or I don't know. Well, I don't know what the word is, but I heard something. I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, Ken. But I heard something about the release. I heard that the reason you guys were released was because of the way Ronald Reagan talked about the people that were holding you. He would refer to them as what was it? He said, he goes, "We don't negotiate with
Okay.
animals."
So that,
He goes,
well, I'll bring it into
and
context
I
for you.
heard that while he was being sworn in, the plane with you guys in it was leaving Iranian airspace. Is that true?
Now, the facts of what you're saying is reported as true. I came home. I was released months before. I wasn't there the whole 444 days. I came home
Oh,
earlier because my wounds festered. Long story short, um, you remember Ross Perot, that little guy from Texas that ran for
yeah.
Yep.
he had more damn money than he had common sense. Anyway,
Yeah.
he had at that time, and it was a movie and it's starring Burt Lancaster in it, and it was called. It's now a good. It's also a book on Wings of Eagles by Ken Follett, and in that it talks about EDS, Ross Perot's company, and they had the same thing. They had attacked some of the buildings that he owned, and had gotten two of his CFO and CEO and captured them and kept them for literally hostage for ransom. And when Jimmy Carter wasn't doing anything, they weren't talking about it. They just put him on the back burner. He actually hired a American Army colonel, Bill Simons, played by Burt Lancaster, to go in there, bust into where they were in Avon prison, and get them out. And at the time, I was in that book, and they had mentioned that they thought I was in the same prison, but they were in the Quasar prison. I was in a vid prison. But anyway, in the book and the movie, they talk about, hey, we're going in, and I'm going to hire my own mercenary force. And they put a bunch of contacts in there, and they ran a really good operation. They went in, they got Paul Scipione and Bill, I think it's Bill Sullivan. Yeah, Bill and Paul. And they got them out, but they could not get me out. And the Commandant of the Marine Corps at the time, Jimmy Carter, said, look, we got reasons for him to be there. And again, when you read that book, you'll shit yourself when you find out the reasons they left me there. But anyway, during that week of captivity, once they couldn't realize, they couldn't get through and find out, well, we don't know this much about this guy. They brought in the PLO. The PLO sat there and they interviewed me. Yeah, they called it an interview. It was more of an interrogation and inquisition at the time, and promised no more beatings or tortures, and that if I could give them, if I really was a Marine Guard hostage, if I was a Marine security guard there, I would know the way the training was, what our protocols were. I know a lot about security, the way in general they are all over the world, the embassies and the consulates, things like that. It'd be a landfall of information for them, for terrorists. And I told him, you read it in the book, and even in my Reader's Digest version in 1979, September 79, it was called The American is Cell Number 5. That was the first basic story, the only one we were allowed to talk about, because they still had our hostages over there. They couldn't paint me as a picture as a hero, because they would have made the other Marines and other Americans that were there still hostage pay for it. So now you're looking at it, and from the PLO point of view, and I said, look, like Lynn said, I'm not going to give you up anything. I'm a Marine, and then I'm an American military man. I serve in the forces to guard my country and our way of life. I'm prepared to give my life in their defense. But fuck you, get out. And so the beating started again. But then another day went by, I guess, and then the Russians came in, the guys in the nice suits, and you could tell right away with their accent, who the hell they were. Frontline KGB guys. I mean, they're just so perpendicular and stuff. And this must have been their first assignment, to go in and find out who the fuck I was. But they talk about embassy and protocols and things like that. Basically, I told them the same thing. And there's not a whole lot that I could give them. He says then they knew they wanted to know who was CIA and who was intelligence, DIA, FBI. There's all different types of law enforcement, people at that embassy, and they want to know their identities. Well, I know who they were, but a lot of times people that work at embassies have dual identities, at the time, and they can a lot of times they get that when they get mail or when you look in the phone books and things back then. And it's easy to that's all they wanted me to do was point out who's who, and I said no, can't do that either, so when they just kept me like a hot potato, or steaming turd, they just kept passing me on to everybody till they put me up in the book that you'll read to the mullahs that decide, what the fuck are we going to do with this guy? I said, basically, if they would have left me alone for another day or so, I'd have been dead anyway from infection. So it doesn't make a difference. But that didn't serve any of their purposes. It's better if they put me on trial, a murder trial for, shooting Iranians. And, they did. It was a 20-minute murder trial. I was found guilty. And, I was condemned to death. So, they took me downstairs, and the next day they walked me up to the roof, and they were just about ready to execute me. And, at the last minute, the Red Cross had come in, and they had made a deal to, let me go free, let me go home.
What were they going to do? Shoot you?
Yeah.
Shoot you on the roof?
Yeah, they execute you right on top of the Evin prison. That's if you look at the history of it, or some pictures. I'll send you some pictures. You won't fucking believe. Trust me.
Okay.
You could hear the rifles from people that were being executed all the time. So there's no doubt in my mind that I was going ass. I just wanted to make sure they didn't make a mess of the goddamn thing. Shoot straight.
Yeah. Tell us the name of that movie again.
That was On Wings of Eagles.
On Wings of Eagles, and that's
Ken Follett.
Yeah.
KenFollett.
Yeah.
And let me see. Yeah, Burt Lancaster stars.
And what was the name of that website that people can go to? We'll put a link in the
KenKraus.com.
Yeah, we're definitely going to put that link on there. But I'm talking about the website for the prison information that people can go look.
I just Google Evin prison, EVIN.
EVIN. Does Google even?
Yeah, Evin. It depends on which way you say it. Tomato. It's Evin prison, Tehran, Iran.
Okay.
And it's going to come up. And then just hit
images. We'll put a link for those of you that want to read more about that. But if you definitely want to read about the situation, get his book.
And we'll also put a link to your book on Amazon.
Absolutely.
But man, read the book. I'm telling you, it'll bring tears to your eyes, and to not just because of what Ken went through, but because of of what our country let him go through. Yeah. Our country should have never let him go through that. Yeah. When this went, man, if I would have been the president, within 24 hours, that place would have been surrounded by more military and armory than the whole country could have withstood.
And it would have worked because the Shah had just left. The country was in turmoil. You had roving gangs and tribes everywhere. Nobody was in control. The Ayatollah Khomeini had just came back in, and he had to pull in the PLO and Yasser Arafat to be his marshals. And actually, now all those little tribes and every wannabes, he had armed them and gave them drugs and money and everything to fight the Shah's people. And then when the Shah's gone, now he wants to come in and say, okay, the revolution is over, give me back your guns, I'm the new commander in chief. And they go, whoa there, no tonto, that's not the way it's going to be. And so he had a lot of factions, one being the Fedayeen guerrillas that attacked the embassy. So he had a big shitstorm to deal with too, when you have to clean house coming in on and we're talking about, a religious war between Muslim brothers. And there's nothing more crazy and radical than you can see it going on today. Hey, it hasn't changed much since then.
That's what I was just thinking. I mean, I did not know that this type of stuff was going on during that time. Of course I wouldn't, because I was sixth grade, seventh grade, whatever. But there seems to be a status quo of this crap, especially in the last couple of years of the administration just forgetting about people in this type of situation.
It happened again. We were the first ones. That's 46 years ago, Vinnie. That was the first time we ever lost an embassy like that. Now, we had to evacuate the embassy in 74 in Saigon when we pulled out of the country, but that was our choice.
Yeah.
We gave it to the commies, let them have it, but we pulled out. It wasn't
Right.
attacked or stormed and, and held hostage. That was the first time anybody's really been, held hostage for, political reasons. And it was really, out of context. But look what just happened a couple of years ago with Hillary Clinton and Benghazi. And she let those, well, they were,
And then Afghanistan. And
they
then
were
Afghanistan.
they were SEALs at the time and
Yeah.
contractors.
Yeah.
And we could have pulled them out. We had troops in Italy, special ranger units that were on call, could have been there in a matter of hours and saved them. But no, we let them get shot up, beat up, and fucked up. And an American ambassador drugged naked through the streets. Come the fuck on, man.
Yeah.
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 Well,
What difference does it make now, right?
yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I find very interesting that just fascinates me, that if you think about it, I think the number is 22. Ken saved 22 lives over there with his negotiations and getting people out of there.
Yeah.
But you think about the people that are alive today because of those 22 people.
Yeah.
Their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids.
Yeah.
I mean, those are people that wouldn't be alive today if Ken wouldn't have been the brave person he was.
It's amazing you say that or think that, Lynn, because when I came back and I stayed in the Marine Corps. That was 79. And how should I put this? They didn't know what to do with me, the Marine Corps, for the most part. It was a political year, and they were going to get their mileage out of me for the politics. Okay, everybody was running for office, wanted to see me and be with me. Remember back then we were the NATO unit, and it was still the Iron Curtain hadn't fallen down. People don't even know what the Iron Curtain was. We're standing guard against the Warsaw Pact. The entire fucking Europe was behind Iron Curtain. Remember Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin?
Yep.
There was still two Germanys. The GDR and West Germany, East Berlin. I mean, it was crazy. Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, name them. They were all communists. See?
Yep.
That's what we were. We don't have the nice, friendly Russians we have now. The countries you were looking at, they barely got out of there in the 80s. It was, 83, I think, when Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this fucking wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. So it was still back then. So when you're looking at it, and American military at the time, we weren't even wearing our uniforms off a base. And you couldn't find Iran or Iraq. Grenada hadn't happened. Panama hadn't happened. We didn't have any heroes going around the world. Okay. Nobody even liked us anymore. I was a Vietnam era veteran because I joined before the embassy fell. And people were still, baby killers, and you fought somebody else's war in Vietnam, and it was very distasteful. Not until they saw us get beat up, shot up, fucked up over there with guns to our head and poked around, did America start to say, and they start to see burning our flag, did America sit up and start to watch it on the news every day, and it got them pissed off day after day after day.
Yeah.
Same thing down there is that most of England back in '82 didn't realize when Argentina attacked and took over the Falkland Islands. Okay, a lot of Brits didn't know it, but when they saw the British Royal Marines were being paraded around and mock executions, the Brits went to war, and that was against another NATO country. See what I mean? So it blows up. It blows up out of proportion real quick. And anyway, so the Marine Corps decided, for a while, just keep me close and quiet. While the other hostage thing was going on. So they put me at the Naval Air Station in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Since my basic MOS, military occupational service, was air traffic controller, I worked with the Marine wing that was stationed there, MAG 49. Anyway, so basically Monday through Friday and then weekends off, it wasn't even a job. I was living with my mom, but with my mom's house, it's just around the corner in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. People were writing cards. Here we're going to tie this in, Lynn. People were writing birthday cards, Christmas cards, Hanukkah cards, you name it, holiday cards, and just putting Sergeant Ken Kraus, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. No street, no address, no zip. And it was being delivered to my house.
Oh, man,
I got
great.
birthday cards, I got welcome home cards for decades. And when I finally did get out of Marine Corps in '82, and I moved around. I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I worked a couple federal jobs, some for the FAA, some for the Department of Energy. And what I did, I still get these cards. And of course, I was about 22 years old when this went down in 1979. So up until the 80s and the 90s, I still get these cards. And I said, how do these people track me? And it says, dear, I remember one, it was saying, dear Officer Kraus. Now I fast forward, I'm in the Roswell Police Department. And I says, you don't know me. I'm so-and-so. It's from a 12-year-old kid that now, but you saved my grandma's life over at Iran. And it breaks me up, man, in tears, is that wow. They weren't even alive. And if I had not done what I had done, it had not come out, one of those miracles that I was talking about, if it hadn't come out and didn't save that woman, that little boy would not have been born. And there was a couple of them like that. It was just like, I'll tell you what, there's no feeling like that in the world, that you can't buy that. You got to earn it. And when somebody remembers that, man, that's just sheer love. And that'll warm your heart. And it's like laying down and letting puppies jump all over you. You can't have a
Yeah. Well, Ken, that was more than earned. I mean, it was more than a miracle that you lived through what you lived through, because, I mean, how you didn't die from sepsis is, beyond a miracle itself.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they didn't beat you to death, and the beatings and the torturing.
Real close, buddy. I try to put it in the book as graphic as I could without, just disgusting people. And, I'm a 100% disabled veteran, and you take a look at the medical records, they're all there, everything is there. It's something you touched on, Lynn, is that, people ask, why did you go back in the trenches again as a cop? What's the matter with you? I kind of thought myself, I tried a couple jobs, and I was married. I had a family. So air traffic controller, same thing. I had to wait for a waiver, couldn't get it, and for the heart murmur, whatever. And anyway, so I went to work for the Department of Energy, and then nuclear weapons. I was a nuclear weapons SWAT specialist. And, they started winding down the nukes too. So I got my opportunity, with the Roswell Police Department. And I was wondering, where do I want to go? I got to go back to college. What I want to do. But, with that opportunity, it's, I said, when I was going through therapy and talking with, therapists for post-traumatic stress and whatnot, what do you really want to do? And I said, I kind of feel robbed. Why do you feel robbed? I said, well, I felt, I let the Marine Corps down, and, we didn't give the best, chance to fight and do what we're supposed to do, at the embassy there. I said, but, I've gotten over the reality. It wasn't, they didn't let us want to win. They deliberately set us up to fail. But I said, I don't have to continue to fail. Okay. I said, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to, I can't go back in the Marine Corps. I want to serve my country, and I got to be something to service, to something that, when you call, I can be there for you, and not just, an accountant or something, or a doctor or a lawyer like that. So that's where, being a police officer, came into play at the time. And, shit.
That makes sense.
I was good at it. So I stayed in the trenches, and I made detective real soon. And, that's where I stayed. I went into forensics, and I put 22 years on the street as a cop. And, I'm happy and retired now for that. So,
okay.
I'm sorry, Lynn. I hear what you're saying about the feelings you had, the feelings of failure. I don't see that at all. I get where you might feel that way, but it doesn't sound to me like in any way that you failed your country in any way.
Well, here's how I see it, Ken. I see that your country failed you, but you didn't fail your country. You took a limited. You went in with your hands tied behind your back because your country didn't give you what you needed.
Yeah.
And you won. You beat all odds, and you come out ahead because, well, you took a shotgun to a firefight and won. There's not very many people on the face of this earth that can do that.
Yeah.
The military was an idiot.
Yeah.
They should have taken you, and they should have said, Ken, you're going to write the book on how to train Marines for eternity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we can't teach this.
Yeah.
This is something that we need you to convey to the next 100 generations, because what you did took we don't have men like that anymore, Ken.
Yeah, we need more guys like you, Ken.
We need a lot more men like you. And I'll be honest with you, Ken. From the time I met you, you and I had a lot of interaction there for about 15, 18, 20 years until you retired. And I have never met a police officer or a detective that was blind to anything other than the facts. You always, from that very first case of this Black Widow and every case that I ever discussed with you, you always went with the facts. You were the only police officer that I've ever met that was never biased to the person around you, whoever you were investigating. You were always true to the facts. No matter what, every time you always went where the facts took you. And any time that I called you up and asked for your advice on a case that I was working on, you never ask about the people. You always ask about the facts.
Yeah. There's facts that are known and facts that are not known that you have to find out, and then you have to vet them. And I think that comes from one, your understanding of the law and how it's supposed to be applied, and the protocols on, your department's policies and procedures on how just to investigate. Okay. But also is that you have to look at, I know what it's like to be locked up, beat up, shot up, and accused of things I didn't do. And something I got to tell you is that it was on my mind right when I was being hauled down the hallway to be executed. Is that I could barely walk at the time. They had to almost drag me. I was so weak, and I wasn't worried about the pain or death even at that point. I had made peace with my Lord, and I said, hey, here's what's going to go. And your mind was so wrapped up in weird shit that you're saying, I just two things I want. One is I just hope they shoot straight, and don't make a mess of it. And the other one is that, you know what? I'm not going to be able to tell anybody anything when I'm dead and gone. I said, so please, Lord, don't tell them. Don't let them go on the news or go on the media and tell people that I was a baby raper or, I was a horrible criminal or some type of, tell them I was a Marine. I was there serving my country, and they started the fight. We finished it. That was it. Yeah. Sorry, they weren't as good of a shots or tactically minded as us, but that's just the way it turns out. And if it's going to be my life, it was going to be my life for the 20 that got away. That's a good deal for that day. But the point being, the point being is that when you're there, you're saying, is this the trade-off that you wanted, for your life? And it said, I had no choice to think about that. All I wanted was that the facts to come out that I died as a Marine in combat, not as a coward. And what you're talking about, Lynn, here is, similar the same way, is that I never wanted to accuse anybody of anything they didn't do. Okay. I wanted the facts beyond a reasonable doubt, something I could put in front of a grand jury and get, an indictment, which it really isn't that hard. But then when they're going to go for trial, just like I was in for trial, I want the facts and the truth to come out. And if it does, let the beans fall where they lay, and whatever the judgments come, and let it be. And I'm good with that. That's why, for the most part, I had to, when I was a police officer, if I knew I wasn't going to get a conviction, I couldn't bend it, bone it, or break it. It had to be, cut and dry, pretty much black and white. If it's going to go in front of a jury, I got to know that I gave this person the best chance on both sides of the fence. And they're found guilty. I don't care. You're going to lose your freedom. Or you're going to lose your life.
Facts.
It was your choice at the time.
Yeah.
So, according to those two protocols, that's what it comes down to. So when I was, I appreciate you, observing that and bringing it to mind, because that's what I wanted to, be known as a, a no nonsense, down to earth and facts. And when I got into forensics, and with the advent of 94 to 96 was OJ trial. People couldn't even spell CSI, and now they got 15 different movies on, CSI and blood spatter, and we wouldn't have AFIS and fingerprints. None of that shit was around. So with all the tools that are out there, it helps us get the facts in front of the right people that can make the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ken, I can say that everything that I, and I'm not going to say the things that we discussed, because we discussed some things that probably don't need to be said here, but every time we discuss things, I mean, you said some things to me that stuck with me over the past that I'm going to say that I probably would have judged them different than you did, but you opened my eyes to that. It made me a better private investigator. And you called on me a couple times to be a CI, confidential informant, and probably made me a better investigator because you made it clear that it was to be fair and not to fudge anything. Just put it in front of you the way it was, and don't fudge anything. And I've always looked at things that way. Maybe you wouldn't have looked at them that way if it wasn't for you, But I'm gonna tell you something. It's been an honor to know you, and that was before I knew you were who you were. Before I knew you was a hero. That you judge things that way. I didn't really know that you were, and even in Iran, you were retired as a police officer before I ever knew that. Matter of fact, you were retired as a police officer. You moved out of the state and and then moved back to the state of Georgia before I ever knew that you was even a Marine. So, but I'm going to tell you, it's an honor to know you as an American hero. My grandfather was a Navy man, and he was in World War II, and he helped liberate Cregador and the Bataan Island. And he told me a few stories, and not many. He wouldn't talk about it much, and I always wanted him to. But it is an honor to know you, and I would encourage everybody to go buy your book and read it, and not just because of what you went through, but it sheds light on what the government didn't do to help you. This could have been a much different outcome if they would have just armed you properly. If they would have given you the ammunition and the proper weaponry this could have been a different outcome.
I think you're dead right on that, and we've had speculation on that with Marines and a lot of different type of men in law enforcement and that have got combat experience, and it's always but woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the fact is that when we were first there posted, we had M16s and we carried 200 rounds on us, and it was only a week before. That was February 1st or 2nd when Khomeini came in and the Shah had left, that they took our M16s away and armed us with shotguns. And they weren't going to do that, but the Gunnery Sergeant Sutton, really raised hell. And I heard he was going to threaten to go above the chain of command and on the news or something like that to, keep us from just having just pistols. So, they took away every. The point being is the speculations would have been, I don't think they would have attacked the embassy knowing that we had automatic weapons and that as we could engage them as soon as they popped their head up over the wall. The only reason they come up over that wall was that they had cover fire from the high-rise apartment complex buildings nearby, and they could keep our heads down while they poured over the walls. But, you blow the heads off the first 3 or 4 or 5, and then we're going to see, just how intense the rest of them are and how well trained, and just you get rid of a couple of the leaders and we'll see what size their big balls are at that time.
Yeah, well, see, if I would have been making the decision, you would have been armed with your high-powered rifles, and you would have had about 10,000 rounds, and you would have been well equipped to handle anything that they threw at you until we could have got back up there.
Right, because it's a diplomatic mission. It's not a fire base. It's really not defendable in a combat situation. There's nothing. There's no concertina wire. There's no place to travel to escape or evade. There's no way to funnel your enemy into your fields of fire. Those things don't exist in an embassy. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like trying to work on it's a 27-acre compound. It's almost like being on a college campus. Which building do you defend? That's it. Not knowing what's going on. It was.
You just need something to keep them off of you until they can get something in there to get you out.
Exactly. And the State
Yeah.
Department knew that too. And I think their rationale, now this is speculation on my point, is that they didn't want to have a bunch of dead bodies laying all over the place when Kamini came in, because I guarantee you, every damn Marine there was 20 of us, we'd have shot and we'd have taken, 10 for one. And then you'd have had hundreds, there.
Yeah.
As it was, we killed over a dozen. So, and they didn't have any medics or anything with them. If you take a look at the pictures in the books, if they got shot, they bled out within minutes. So, I mean, it was dead and dying, for the first 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Well, Ken, I respect you and I honor you, and I can't give you enough accolades about what you did, and it is an honor to shake your hand and thank you for your service. It's just you're.
Most definitely, Ken. It is an honor to know you, and I'm glad Lynn had this idea.
Yeah.
Glad to meet you. Glad to know you. Everybody, you have to read his book. By the way, Ken, real quick, has anyone approached you about a movie on you? Has anybody approached you?
Not directly, no. But you're about the 15th person that says I need to turn this in to somebody that wants to write a play or a playwright screen rip. So if you know somebody, let me know, and we'll take care of it.
I know some people. I know some people who are interested in production and stuff like that. This is the perfect story. The Black Widow is a perfect story. There's 2 movies in this podcast right here.
Why has someone not made a movie about Ken's life?
That's what I'm talking about. Someone's got to make a movie about Ken. Someone's got to make. Who do you want to play you? You know what?
I have no idea.
I'm playing. I'm too old to play Ken.
Yeah, I think my sisters were saying the same thing, and I guess there was a young actor. His last name's Holland.
Oh, Tom Holland. Yeah, that's great.
Holland, yeah.
That's a great casting.
I didn't know who he was. I had to go on, and I said, "It doesn't even look like me." I mean, what the hell?
Well, listen, I'm gonna try to get your book into some people's hands. Everybody who's listening to this podcast needs to buy the book. There's going to be a link Yep, there it is. It's right there. It's a Marine Endures Hell by Ken Kraus. Pick it up. There's also going to be some other links that you can look up to hear more about it and read more about it. Thank you so much for being here, Ken. It was an honor to meet you. Thank you so much for your service.
And once again, we were sponsored by Simple Funding.
Yes, thank you, Simple Funding, for sponsoring this episode. This has been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.